Hello YouTube. Today I want to bring you my dream guide for the Torchlight Afterlight season. Stop. I know what you're gonna say. But Mia, dream is removed from the game. Why are you making a dream guide when it's removed from the game? That's a common misconception of the patch notes. So the dream mechanic is still in the game. That is not removed. But the only thing that the dream mechanic drops is removed from the game. Dream interpretations are removed. Now, if you're like a new player, you don't know anything about the mechanic, or like don't understand anything about it. Essentially, the dream mechanic's whole point and the only loot that actually dropped was this thing called dream talkings. This thing called dream talkings that you would use to like enchant your gear and add affixes to it, such as this. And going into the new season, they have decided to remove that system and just completely scrap it. Which leaves Dream in a very strange position, because as a mechanic, that is the only thing it drops. So what is it gonna do now? Like, it doesn't really drop FE, it doesn't really drop cards, like it drops very, very little. It's so, like 80% of your profit is the Dream Talkings, which is part of the dream interpretation mechanic, which is now just gone. So this is gonna be a tiny bit of copium, but if you actually go back in the— oh god, that's all tabs. If you actually go back in the day, doing dream back in the day, you used to have screenshots like this. When you finish your map, you open your eggs, and you have 5,000 FE and 5,000 cards pop out. Do you see any dream talkings on this screen? Because I'm going to be real with you. I don't see any. I just see money. I just see raw FE and money. So, with that being said, I'm taking a bit of a risk here on making this dream guide. Because yeah, maybe it's going to be absolutely garbage next season. But maybe it's going to be really good, and anyone who watches this video is going to be ahead of the curve, because they're going to understand exactly how to optimize Dream and get the most value out of it. With that being said, though, let's quickly open a map so I can actually showcase the mechanic for everyone, as well as just talk over it a bit quickly. So, the Dream mechanic is an in-map mechanic where you interact with a lotus, where you can then choose— well, basically, every time you get into the mechanic, let's just get into the map and I'll show you. Sorry, I didn't expect my compasses to be there, so yeah, when you get into the map and the dream mechanic, you're going to run into this Advent of Nightmare chance, 0%, and then this lotus. So this Advent of Nightmare chance, this is the chance or percentage chance that you're going to get taken into the nightmare on dream. Now, the way you want to play this mechanic is you want to prioritize getting as many rainbow baubles as possible, and you want to not get in the nightmare as much as possible. So once you interact with it for the first time in every in every interval or session, so similar to if you watch the Black Cell video, you know, we do 6 maps of Black Cell, then we go into the Black Cell. Dream doesn't have a set amount of maps that you're doing, but after every nightmare, you're gonna start over from like the starting point. We're gonna have actually 3 dream baubles. Now, I'll come clean. I did not do dream this season. I've done it many times in previous seasons, but this season I did not play any dream. But if I had a fully upgraded dream, you can get up to 4 starting baubles. But the optimal strat is to have 3 baubles, and I'll get to that in a bit. But then what you're gonna do is you're gonna choose here from options. Now, you're gonna have all sorts of options. You're gonna have options like this, where for every 3 baubles of a type, you get 1 red bauble of that same type. So here we have gear baubles, which the gear baubles are very, very bad. You have things like this, that whenever the quality of a bubble changes, the quality for another bubble changes. And you're gonna have like special events, like starting from the next level of the Sweet Dream, whenever the Dream Omen is selected because of the effect of the Sweet Omen one time. What this essentially means is these options that you get are the Sweet Omens. So if you get a Sweet Omen that says add 3 bubbles, instead of adding 3 bubbles, it's gonna add 6 bubbles, because the effect is gonna happen twice. From all of these, the upgrading quality by 1 is by far the best one, though. Because the way you want to play the dream mechanic actually is even though you have 12 bubbles, unless you have like, you know, every 3 commodity bubbles gain 1 red commodity, or every 6 commodity bubbles gain 1 rainbow commodity bubble, the way you actually want to play this mechanic is you want to stay at as few bubbles as possible, ideally just 3 bubbles, and you want to try and change all of these bubbles into either, ideally commodity bubbles as the best one, but there's also just generic bubbles. I actually forgot the name of the generic bubbles, which are like decent, or you can change it into compass bubbles, or, you know, all the other bubbles are pretty much dog shit, really. At least in the current set of Dream, like, the only one you really care about is commodity or the generic one. Chat, what's the generic one's called? Whim, thank you. Pretty much, you just want to prioritize getting whim bubbles or commodity bubbles. If you can get it, I think the compass ones are decent, they're like mid-tier. I think slightly better than the compass ones is the chord ones. And pretty much any other bubbles, like gear bubbles, cube bubbles, or just very orangey. Like, gear is always dog shit, completely trash, the worst one by far. Cube can sometimes give you a cube, but, you know, it is kind of gambling. Black cells, like, also just kind of mid-tier and stuff. But what we're going to do is now we're going to get into our first Sweet Dream. And again, our priority right now is we want to change all of these bubbles into commodity and or into whim, ideally commodity. And we want to upgrade them to red. So we don't have any options here to upgrade them to like a good color. I mean, to a good type. So we're just going to choose the black cell one and we're just going to upgrade it. Because if we do the black cell one, you know, it gets the gear bubble away, which is by far the worst bubble. So it improves that bubble. And we're going to get +3 quality. Because we're going to +1. And then on top of that, this effect's also going to occur once and give us another level. So this becomes orange, black cell, purple, black cell, and then additionally this upgrades to orange. Now the max rank that you can actually get is red. You need to have either a special Sweet Dream affix to go from red to rainbow. Rainbow is really, really good to get, and it is like super duper ideal for us to get. But most of the time, you're just aiming to try and get like 3 red, basically. And you want to get those 3 red to also then be a good color. Now, this mechanic also has like all sorts of like cool stuff to it. You'll sometimes, when you're in the Dream Realm, see like these mists on the ground, these blue mists. We haven't seen one yet. It is worth running over those because they can sometimes spawn chests, which can give you some FE, which is really nice.
What did you just dream of?
But yeah, again, oh, fluorescent, that's slightly better than black cell. And now we have both our bubbles at red. Boom. So now, literally what we're just playing for is now, at this point, we can consider adding another bubble if we do get the option to add one. And then trying to get that to red as well. And on top of that, we just want to try and change these both to commodity bubbles so that we can maybe get some loot from it. Now, let's say you get into a situation where, you know, your 3 bubbles that you have to choose from all kind of suck. You don't want to choose any of them. Like, you know, all 3 options are just going to make it worse for you. You do have an option, you have a generic option that is always going to be available to you, that I'll show to you at the end of this one. This lightning, by the way, is a Sweet Dream that we got. I mentioned like the mist can sometimes give you the treasure chest. This time the mist gave us a lightning buff, which just one-shots all the enemies around us. So yeah, here, we have add 2 commodity bubbles or blue or better. So, because we already have 2 red bubbles, we could consider just doing this. But we are guaranteed to go into the nightmare in the next one time we go in. So we're going to be better off just replicating these bubbles and hoping to get something good. But let's say all 3 of these options are completely awful, right? You can click this button at the bottom here, and this is always going to give you upgrade the quality of 1 bubble by 1 tier, no matter what. But we're just going to replicate our bubbles, and we're going to go into the nightmare. Now, we're only going to be able to go into the nightmare on the next map, but it is guaranteed that we'll be taken into the nightmare. Now, this is basically going to be the payoff of the mechanic. All of what we've been doing up until this point has been building up the dream so that we can get our big payoff of the nightmare, which is where the loot is going to be. So this is not going to teleport us into the nightmare. The nightmare is going to be like an exact copy of the map, but it's very important when you do enter the nightmare, you do actually have to interact with this Crimson Lotus or Nightmare Lotus to start the nightmare. And once you start the nightmare, Your objective is very simple. There's going to be these glowing marks on the map. Let's see if we can find one. There's the glowing marks. You just want to run up to them and kill them. And at half HP, they're going to spawn mobs around them that tether to the sky that makes them immune to damage. You have to kill off the mobs it spawns to be able to hit this, the thingy. And once you kill all 4 of them, you will then be able to exit the nightmare. Now the last one is always going to be 3 phases because it spawns a boss at 33%. But once you kill the boss, you're able to kill him. And then when you interact with it, the bubbles are going to pop out. And as you can see, the loot is just absolutely pitiful. It is horrendous. This mechanic is entirely just, right now, in its current state, is just about commodity bubbles and win bubbles. Win bubbles are especially good because they, on average, pump out the most dream talkings. But commodity bubbles can sometimes drop you like 50 stacks and stuff like that. But this mechanic is just in a absolutely horrible state right now where all that you're pretty much praying for is just getting dream talkings. And my hope, and the reason I'm making this video, even though it might seem fruitless to a lot of people, is I'm coping and hoping and praying that going into the next season, that the compensation buffs are going to give Dream by removing the Dream talkings is going to make it a mechanic where you can farm cards again, you can farm FE again, you can actually get something out of the mechanic. And it's not just this absolutely despair of mechanic that just doesn't drop anything. With all that being said though, let's quickly go over some core concepts about the mechanic. So the first thing is, there is a tree to the Dream mechanic. The Dream Cloud Atlas. As you do maps, you're going to be getting points that you can then like spend, you know, getting all of these main points and getting all of these side points. But I mentioned before that you're going to get to having 3 sorting bubbles or 4 sorting bubbles. This point gives you +1 initial bubble, and this point gives you +1 initial bubble. The optimal way to actually set up your dream bubbles is like this. You don't fully fill in the mechanic, and you don't bother putting in points on this side and this side, because both of these are just XP. You know, that doesn't actually give us more loot. And by dropping those 8 points, we are actually able to drop 1 +1 bubble in initial vision. And by dropping this 1 bubble, it actually makes it significantly easier, if you're storing 3 bubbles, to get all of them to red. Because this mechanic is all about consistency. We just want to, as consistent as possible, get as many reds as possible. And when you're like constantly like getting bad options and you need to like choose the, you know, upgrade 1 bubble by 1 tier option, it's very often that you're going to end up like, you know, not being able to get every bubble to plus to red. And when you have 4 bubbles, the odds of you getting them all to, like getting any of them to red, it just goes down a significant amount. But when you have 3 bubbles, you can like pretty reliably, unless you get pulled in like on a 10% nightmare, just get like 2 bubbles to red. Sometimes 3 bubbles to red. Which just makes your dreams a lot more consistent and a lot better. So this is actually the optimal way to do it. It is not worth it to put in all the points in the Dream Atlas, even though that does seem a bit counterintuitive. Now let's quickly go over the compass for Dream. Dream is unfortunately not in a good state at all, if it wasn't clear from what I just said. The only compass you have for Dream is going to be a blue compass, which is this Nightmare Compass, and all it does is it just spawns the Dream, which essentially lets you save 15 points on the Atlas tree, which is quite nice. Then as for the Atlas tree itself, it is worth it to take all of the points here on the right. All of these points here makes it that you're less likely to enter the Nightmare, and your whole strat in this farm is you don't want to go into the Nightmare. You want to stay outside the Nightmare for as long as possible, to upgrade your bubbles as much as possible. That being said, then on the left side, it's worth going to this for the sweet dreams, because now this is something that might change in the next patch, but this is at least something that is currently very worth it to go for. This node right here, in round stages, you have a 10% chance to spawn 1 additional nightmare monster that can drop Queen's Grace. This monster that spawns actually spawns a boss monster in your map. And in the current state of Dream, this boss monster is like probably your main source of dream talkings from this mechanic. This boss literally drops more Dream Talkings than the bubbles from Dream itself, which is just absolutely stupid. So maybe in the next patch, this boss isn't really gonna drop anything. It's not gonna be worth it anymore with the Dream Talkings being removed. Maybe it's gonna be an FE Pinata, but this is something you can definitely experiment and test with. But even if you don't take these points, you can go up here. These points are worth it to get the 20% additional drop quant. And you never take these points. These 4 points on the left side are not worth it at all. And most people do not take them in the strats. So that being said, if you then drop the 15 points to spawn the Dream, and you drop these 4 points here, you end up with Dream being like just a mid-investment mechanic. You can run Dream and like run 2 other mechanics with it realistically, or at least 1 big other mechanic with it. It's a very like low investment mechanic, but we're gonna have to see if it actually has any payoff in the next season. Let's go over the pet. Now the pet's gonna be an interesting one. In the new season, you are gonna be able to actually hand in your pet. Because of the Dream interpretations being removed from the mechanic. If you have the pet, I would suggest just holding on to it for a bit. Just feel out the mechanic first. Let other people feel it out. You don't even have to like try it yourself. Just see what other people are saying about the mechanic. If people are saying this mechanic is like absolutely insane, is printing FE, maybe keep the pet. Maybe try the mechanic out. But if people are like really bad about it, or if there's a different mechanic you want to farm, you can exchange this pet and exchange it for like pretty much any pet except the brand new pet that comes out. Like the brand new lake pet that comes out. That's what this pet does. I mean, one of the big things it actually has is this 4% additional Dream Talking drop quantity. We don't know what's going to happen to that. They didn't show us the new Shepherd pet. We don't know how they're changing it. Last time when they changed the turnout, they actually did show us the new pet. So it's going to be interesting to see how they change this pet. And on top of that, I mean, the pet otherwise is pretty good. It makes it that when you're in the nightmare and you're busy killing the roots, so I mentioned that you have like those big circles you're killing. Those are the roots, and there's 4 of them in every nightmare. You have a 10% chance for them to drop a Dream Bubble. So that insane rainbow commodity bubble that you have a 10% chance from every root for that bubble to just drop. And you just get an extra rainbow bubble in your Dream, which is awesome. Then at level 2 and level 4, it gives you a chance for another Sweet Dream Omen selection. So essentially, it gives you another chance to, upgrade your bubbles once again, or add a bubble at the very end. Just do something like that at the very end once you enter the nightmare. At level 3 and at level 5, you're able to re-roll your Dream Omens. So like your Sweet Dream Omens that you get, let's say you get 3 awful options, you do get the option to actually re-roll them and try to get something better. And then lastly, at level 6, it just increases the Dream Bubble drop chance from 10% to 13%. Pretty generic, pretty standard for a pet. One of the better pets to have only at level 1. Because being able to get 4% quantity of items dropped on Nightmare monsters, and 4% additional drop quantity, and 12% drop quantity is very, very, very powerful. Now, I will admit, in the map I ran, I did not have this pet equipped. That's because I just don't have the space in any of my pack spreads to have it, and because I don't play the Dream mechanic. So the loot you saw was missing like 100% additional quant. So, over 100% quant. So realistically, instead of dropping like 2 FE, I would have dropped 4 FE, maybe 5 FE. Yeah, it's not the greatest, but let's hope. Let's hope that this video isn't in vain, and let's hope that going into the next season, that this mechanic's actually pretty good. I thought I'd just pump this video out quickly, because I knew it would be a very short one. There's a lot of tech things, like, there's not that much tech things, but like, there's a lot more detail I could go into. I just didn't think it would be necessary if the mechanic's completely ass. Because if the mechanic is good, I think I gave you the information you would need to like actually run it optimally in the new lake. And I think the majority of people, you're not even going to try the mechanic, and it's just going to be unfortunately bad. But with all that being said, I hope you guys had a lovely, lovely video, and I'll see you all again next time. Bye-bye, YouTube.